The intention of these is to create a safe place for martial artists to come together to sharpen each other. Sword, iron sharpens iron. To inspire each other, to test out ideas, um, and we've just sort of let it evolve naturally. And so topics have changed. Different people present. Some of the topics that we've had include things like whip, kinetic linkage, structure, rooting, these types of things. Most recently, we've been speaking about power, or the impact. And the way I want to speak about it today is the collision. And and so that is kind of what the intention of this forum is. For me, it's been a really introspective journey because this all started due to the pandemic, and so for all that time, I've spent much more of my time on forums or taking a section of a form and dissecting it and working and standing meditations alone and solo stuff as opposed to being able to work with partners. So I feel like I have evolved as a martial artist more internally, more spiritually in these past 8 months. And I'm looking forward to what these connections that we do, where we'll end up growing and what we'll end up seeing once we do connect with people. And some people are connecting with others now as well. Um, so an impact force, if we talk about it, I'm sorry, to bring it to today's topic, what I wanted to do is sort of put this all together and just share with you what I've been doing, what I do every morning. And it includes doing the original Bagua and, and a standing meditation along with other things. But I wanted to just share it with you because I wanted to sort of very slowly detail everything that I see going on. And some of this, who are Bagua players, some of you may know some of this stuff. I might say something that you don't know. Some of this might be new to you. Whatever it is that you may get out of this, hopefully you'll get something out of it. Um, I'm hoping that you'll use it in your life, and you'll use it in your own art, and maybe give you a new way of looking at something. Or maybe just dust off something that you just are re-examining. So with that, an impact force is is a force that delivers a shock or a high impact in a relatively short period of time when two entities collide. So I want to talk about today that collision that happens between two opponents, we'll just say for today, and I want to do it specifically looking at detailing out the first three movements of the opening. So this would include engaging into the conflict and then engaging into the collision and then how the collision is resolved. And all of the aspects that go into that, power, leverage, um, position, for all that sort of stuff as we go along. My plan is to have you actually get up for a portion of this so it's not all talking and sort of walk you through it and share some of the things that I'm feeling in my head with my body. See if you feel those things too, because since the whole overlaying thing here is connections, kinetic linkage, connecting to the ground with your root, connecting with each other, all of this stuff is connections. Um, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought on that. But anyway, any questions about that sort of idea of us examining those first three movements to explore collision and impact power so far? Okay.
Nope, sounds good.
So Bagua is an interesting style of martial arts. It is considered one of the three pillars, one of the three sisters, one of the three internal arts, that being Tai Chi, Xing Yi, and Bagua. A metaphor that I really like to sort of visualize these collisions is the Tai Chi you can think of as the bowling ball, right? It has Xingyi, you can think of as I'm sorry, the rubber ball. Excuse me. Let me back that up. Tai Chi as the rubber ball. So Xingyi as this bowling ball. Everything power is just coming straight in, right? Um, Ron, I know you do a lot of Xingyi. Do you resonate with a bowling ball metaphor for the? Yeah.
I still remember Uncle first told me that same metaphor. He said the bowling ball was shimmy, and I think he used a rubber ball, or he said a beach ball was like Tai Chi.
Oh, beach ball. Okay.
I remember that. That's good.
The last one is the bagua, which would be the wire cage, the wire steel cage, right? Which is engulfing. It takes and breaks. By the way, wrote down a huge 3-page of notes of this stuff. I'm going to share this all with you before we go. You can actually even comment into this document if you want. Print it off, do whatever you want. So yeah, it's this spiraling thing. And so that's sort of like the big overview idea of bagua. It takes you in. So the distance is a close art, right? It's meant for fighting. It's very similar to grappling. I've come to really see it as a crushing wave of spirals and sort of like a wave crashing. So there's a whip, there's a rubber band. I call this a rubber band airplane. I don't think I've ever heard anybody call this, or I've learned this. I just really like those rubber band airplanes you have when you're a kid that you can spin the thing. You've got a rubber band attached to an O hook, and then as soon as you let go, it takes off. That idea of sort of being ready to be sprung, we'll talk about in these 3 movements. Positioning. If you've heard bagua, you might have heard circle walking, right? And it's, that's where you walk the circle. And that is definitely part of it. It's only, a small part of it in the whole entirety of it. But what the big thing about that circle is, and that movement is that we are seeking the 4th door, or we are seeking a more advantageous place to apply a technique. Bagua players think of the body as a building, and front door, side door, and your back door being in your back. Okay, so our goal in that circle walking is to get to that back door where we have more of an advantage. We can fight straight down on the center line, but it's preferred to use our brains to figure out how to get to a better place. So size wouldn't matter as much. Sometimes, and the idea too isn't that you necessarily take that person out in one punch, right? Or you make your way to the 4th door and then you do your one movement. You can soften them up. You may be attacking each door before you finally get to the 4th door. And you may attack them, maybe not necessarily straight on. Just real quick, don't laugh. This is Chair Bob. Okay, so this is the front door, right? This is the front door. These are the side doors. And that's the back door of this guy right here, right? So if I can attack here, I can do all sorts of movements in here. But ideally, I want to get off to the side. That's where the walking of the circle is. So I'm trying to walk off the circle. Doesn't mean I can't strike down his center line, right? I can sure come here off of his center line and then achieve a much more preferable place to be. Okay? Any questions on that so far?
I just want to compliment your model making.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's becoming a bit of a habit. Okay. So the other thing here, other concepts to be watching for when we start moving, is this idea of sticking skills and listening skills. So sticking skills, what I mean by sticking skills is that once you stick to someone, right, you stay on them. You roll on them, right? You continue to code. We're not hitting and go away. So that initial strike is the stick. Okay, listening takes that to the next level, so that you're basically now taking your intention, your yi into them in the same way you would extend it out into a weapon. You're taking it into them so that you can know where their body is in space, where their center of gravity is, where there's pressure being applied, and use that information with your control center to determine the vector to get you to the best place that you can be, advantageous, whether that's a strike or simply a redirect to move you. Circles, of course, are huge. You see circles in everything when it comes to Bagua. Uncle used to call gathering and separating. So centripetal and centrifugal, definitely a huge aspect of Bagua, which you'll see. Spirals, they can contract and expand. And then the last point to kind of keep your mind thinking about when we start to go through the movements is this idea of a unified strength with your entire body. So your entire body, and I include your mind in the entire body. So that's when your body is moving, your whole body is moving. When your body is attacking, your whole mass is attacking. And connecting our brain so that we are in control of all of these types of things, so that we can try to move our energy, or whatever is going to be happening in a fight or flight situation, from the reptilian brain to this higher level of thinking. These are the movements. For a quick overview. Okay, we start with we're going to get our root, which I'll walk you through, and then you're going to do a lean to find direction. This movement is called hide flower under leaf, and ending with black dragon exits the cave. Those three movements. So what you're seeing here is just an example of some of those three moves done more at a realistic speed and on Bob here. So lean to find direction, hide flower under leaf, and black dragon exits cave, and then mix them up. Okay, so now that you saw sort of one technique at a higher speed, realize that of course there's infinite techniques in these. And one of the things I challenge myself to do is, if I'm working through a form, I'll stop. I'll take 2 or 3 movements, and I'll try to figure out 20 different applications of that movement. Right, and and it may not be exactly the same, but it'll have the same sort of idea, right? So in other words, it may be like this, or it may be like that, but the same idea.
Can I interject something here real quick?
Yes.
Just one thing that I would mention, and that's fantastic, is to try to find the principle within the movement. And to your point, that's easier to do when you're looking at different ways to apply, say, hide flower under leaf. But if you can try to first extrapolate, okay, what's the principle that they're trying to show with this particular part of the gua, whether it be piercing palm or hide flower under leaf or black dragon, try to extrapolate the principles and then put that principle into each of the applications. And you'll be much further ahead in terms of just trying to find from a physical perspective, okay, here's what physically hide flower under leaf is doing, let me figure out, 10 different ways to strike with high flying relief. But you also need to extrapolate the principle and apply it to each one of the techniques that you're looking to throw from that.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes there can actually be, there's multiple principles in a
Oh, of
technique.
course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So if you've got 3 square feet around you and you want to jump up, we can start moving the body and talking about these movements as we go through it, looking for the techniques and looking for the principles. All right. I've tried to set it up to where you can see most of my body here. All right, so I work my way into a standing meditation to start. Before I actually to actually settle the mind. I do this every morning before I get going, and then I started to do my exercises. So the very first thing that I do, one, Bagua can be sort of tough on your knees, and two, my knees have some problems. So what I do is you put your feet, sort of just lift your feet up and just kind of let them naturally find their spot where they're, roughly shoulder distance apart, maybe a little closer. Nothing too close, nothing too far. And then reach down and put your hands on your knees. So you're bending, putting your butt out a bit, right? And then I just slowly warm up the knees by trying to bring your feet in just a tad bit closer, and then rotate, just slow rotations here as I hold the knee really slow, just checking in with the knees and getting things moving, basically a dynamic stretching. Also a nice way to just sort of warm up into it, then reverse it. And then also move, come on out, rolling out here. Then reversing that. Okay. All right. So our feet, I work my way up from the foot up to the hips first. That's like the first section of it. So with your foot, you have your 3 nails that you can think about. They're on the inside of the foot, right? One at the toe, one on the pad, and one at the heel. Okay? You can think about the one at the toe as sort of the one that gives direction, the one at the pad as your power, and the one at the heel is your anchor. So slightly toe out to a V. You're about 2 or 3 fingers between the back of your foot, your ankle, your heels. You're out on a V. Not too extreme, not too close. Just what you would just imagine a normal V and what feels good as a V. Okay? Roll into those nails. So roll into the inside, and then if you can do this bare feet, that's the best. And then go ahead and grip with your toes. Feel the ground like as if you're actually trying to pull yourself down into the ground. You're pulling your foot and rooting yourself. Working your way up to the knees. So your knees you don't want to have your knees out too far in. You want them to be up straight, about over the second toe, not far out here. But we're going to find a natural balance by just sort of bending it, letting it relax, bending it, and then just sort of bounce a little and just settle. Settle into slight bend of the knees. Now you should be feeling your toes and your toes are engaged. You've got your leg muscles engaged here, and now your hip, push your hip back, push your hip forward, and then let it drop. Just let it drop and sink. Okay? Now, if you've got this good structure now, you should feel like you're almost a post. Like from here to the ground is a telephone post. Super, super strong in there. Okay? When you rotate here, we're going to rotate at the hips. Okay? We're not going to rotate at the knees. Yep, we're going to rotate along the waist. Okay. So far, so good? Yeah, so far, so good, guys?
Good.
Real quickly, before we move on here, I want to talk about when we start to move the foot, keep in mind we want to rotate from the waist, not from the knee here. So what I like to do is if you grab your thigh, just like literally grab one thigh, okay? And then whatever thigh you have grabbed, weight the other leg, okay? So you're weighting the other leg, so the leg that you're grabbing now is now going to be not weighted, okay? And then what I want you to do is pretend like you can't bend your knee, like it's all wrapped up, okay? And then if you turn your thigh and you keep this foot off the ground, that is the way you're going to move when we change directions. Okay, we'll see that again more when we start to do it. Okay. All right, so making sure I've got my good base. The feet, everything's pulling to the ground. We're gonna now, and I don't bend down. I'm only bending down because I'm coming out of the screen. I should be maintaining my back up straight. But what you're gonna do is like you're gonna imagine there's a string attached to the center of your head, and as you pull that string up, right, pull it up, pulls your head up, so that your head is able to look in each direction with ease. Your neck starts to straighten out, your back is straightened, okay? So you imagine your head is being pulled up. At the same time, you're pulling the root down. So you're simultaneously pulling up towards the heavens and holding on to the earth, okay? Now, we've worked our way up through the torso and the head and the base here. The last part are the extremities of the arms. Okay, so pretend like you're like in an old Western, you know, you go, hey, you know, or, you know, you got a real tough guy, Western guy, right? So pull it really back and then just let it drop. Okay, maybe pull it back again, pull your shoulders back and just let it drop and relax. That's where you want your shoulders, just relaxed. Now all we're going to do is bring your hands up and you're going to bring them into a diamond shape right here with the center of that diamond being at the dantian, which is located 3 fingers below the navel. And then about a fist distance from your stomach out. Then circles everywhere. So softness here, softness. Underneath your armpit, you visualize that you've got a quail egg that you're sort of keeping in there. So it's not closed like this, and it's not too big. It's just enough to actually hold a small egg there. From this point, this is where I go into meditation. And before I start, if you close your eyes now, you can really, really get in tune with all of the muscles that are firing to keep yourself balanced. And when you close your eyes, you also start to go a little bit off balance, so you can start to, in a meditation, actually get in tune with all the firing that's going off of the muscles that are sort of keeping you upright. So, you know, I'll close my eyes and I'm exaggerating this, but I end up sometimes, you know, like this sort of thing, almost like it's a slight moving meditation, even though it's standing. Okay, so now moving into the first thing, into our first position, which is lean on horse to determine direction. The principle here is we are engaging We're engaging in the conflict right now. We are the yin and the yang. We have to morph, all right? We're not going to hit and box. We have to become them. So this is, we're not engaged and we're just about to be, okay? So one of the things is first is you bring in here, you collapse, and sink into our bones. And then when we jump off to shoot, okay, what we're going to do is start to weight to the left. We're going to do it real slow. Start to weight to your left, okay? Now you take your right foot off the ground, okay? And as your hand goes, hand and the foot are going to move together, okay? And then it's going to unify with the body movement, okay? And at this point, the right foot, leading foot, starts to set. It's going to grab its toes, pulling. The back foot is going to start to go onto the push off right here, right? And if we were attacker coming up with the center line here, we then move forward and then just bring that back foot with us a little bit. And at this point, Ava wants to call this guy Guy. Okay, at this point, simultaneously, we've attacked the top and the bottom. Okay, so not engaged at all here, boom. As soon as I get here, I've connected here, and I'm connecting down with my foot as well. Okay, now, of course, it might be on this side, it might be on this side, but in any case, I'm going to push down on that, right? My body's moving. So as I'm push here, I'm engaged here and here. And both of these are what are going to help me with my listening skills to know what's going on. Let's say at this point, I'm uprooting him, right? He's starting to fall back. Great. He's going to step forward, right? Because I could feel that he was starting to go. I was aware of that. Okay, let's repeat that. And of course, the thing here is that everything is broken down, but in reality, it would not be broken down. Okay, this idea of connecting, right, and then the next movement is here, would not be a break. There would be a connection right into it. Boom, boom, simultaneously. Okay. So, from the starting point, okay, weight goes on to your left side. You start to go in, sunken, bring it in, and we shoot out. Good. Now, that was one idea principle, which is a big one, is that idea of rolling. This also, could simply have been a right there, right to the throat. Could be straight to a strike, right? So that's Eric. Do you have a principle maybe you could attach to that one I just demoed?
Yeah. So one of the principles that I like to illustrate in piercing palm is wrapping the bones. So as the hands are coming out, I don't have two sticks, but if you had two sticks, so the hands aren't coming out straight, they're actually spiraling out as they come out. So they're not as we come up and shooting out straight, they're coming out and they're spiraling. It's drilling into that piercing palm. So what you want to try to visualize what's happening in the forearm, and it rolls from the shoulder. So you covered making the back or the chest concave, the back convex. So that's giving us power in addition to our weight coming forward. But with this piercing palm, there's also this drilling action. And if you can try to envision wrapping the radius and the ulna bones around each other as this pierces through, these are all just little force multipliers that's going to allow you to have more impact into your strike. Even if it's not, say, a piercing palm, I say to the eye, even if it's a a palm strike or kind of like unicorn spitting book type strike, it's still going to have that same kind of a corkscrew type of an action. So there's a lot of force multipliers happening. You covered a lot with the low line in terms of the step and that drag step with the rear foot to get your mass behind the forward movement. So in addition to that, we're closing the chest, opening the back. So we got this rounding of the shoulders. In addition to that, we got the rolling in of the elbows and the twisting and the wrapping of the bones in the forearms. So all these little things are force multipliers that are going to just enhance, this particular type of a strike, whether it's a finger shot to the eye or the throat, a palm strike, whatever it is. But that opening movement, you want to get that closing of the chest, the rounding of the back, in addition to the rolling and the wrapping of the forearms. So that's definitely one principle, is wrapping with this piercing palm movement.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add something to that twisting, the benefit of that twisting motion? When you twist the arm, I'm sorry, I don't know, Eric, I can see you.
Yes, sir.
You're right, it rotates the radius and the ulna around each other. That's correct. But what that does, it tightens the fascial tissue
Yes.
between the two bones.
Yes, sir.
So when you make the impact, rather than that fascial tissue being flaccid and loose and absorbing some of the energy, because it's now taut, it doesn't allow relative motion between the radius and the ulnar, which makes it a more rigid structure. So you don't absorb any of the impact in your arm, you deliver the impact. It's analogous to hitting a nail with a rubber hammer. If you hit the nail with the rubber hammer, the hammer bounces off. You hit the nail with a steel hammer, it's rigid, it doesn't absorb any energy, it doesn't deform in a rearward direction. So that twist, one benefit of the twist is making that structure, that forearm structure, rigid.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Impact. Secondly, the end of that rotation gives you a very finely defined focal point, so that when you make contact, you're making it at a pinpoint location rather than dispersing it over time. So what Brandon referred to before, referred to impact. Impact is proportional to the rate of deceleration. So for the same force, the more rapid the deceleration, the greater the impact. So if you have a very finely defined focal point, you can decelerate over a short period of time because you're focusing on one single point, not over a range. And because you can decelerate more rapidly, the impact is greater. So there's two benefits to that rotation. Would you call it wrapping?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, different people call it different things, but it has the same purpose.
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to expand on your explanation a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in at this point?
Sure. So when we're drilling and we're using a supination motion, turning the hand palm up, so the ulna does not rotate at all. The ulna is fixed. It's only got a hinge.
Right. Yeah, it's
The
a
radius-
visual type of a
the
thing about
radius-
tightening the fascia. Absolutely.
The radius rotates around, and actually, if we are supinated, we've got two bones here, and we're supinated, they're like this. If my two arms were the two bones. When we pronate, the radius rolls over the ulna. So when we supinate, the interosseous membrane opens up. When we pronate, the two bones actually can come into contact and the interosseous membrane closes up some. So when we're doing a supination movement that involves drilling, we're actually opening those two bones up as opposed to closing them. and that space and that radius is the bone that's doing the motion. And most of that is going to be done with some fairly small muscle in the arm. But what we get out of that is pressure, right? We've made contact, and if I just saw straight through, I only get one vector of pressure. But if I add a screwing motion, I'm pushing something. I'm pushing something this way. Actually, I'm pushing something in a spiral as I'm going forward. And so that puts the person off. It helps to uproot them. It gives them more than one vector of force to have to deal with. So like if I'm turning this like this and I'm sawing into something, that person has to adjust in more ways than one. It makes it harder for them to deal with it.
Would you say it's a constant changing vector as opposed to multiple vectors?
I'm sorry?
You say it's a constant changing vector as opposed to multiple vectors?
Well, you've got multiple vectors of force going on. I mean, a vector is just a direction. It's just
Right,
a
direction.
direction. So we've got the direction of just going forward, right? But we're adding to that a rotation.
Right.
And actually what happens for most of us when we do this, we are emphasizing this aspect. You know, we'll drill and we're kind of pushing like that and then lift. So it ends up being a spiral of motion added to that straightforward sawing action.
Sure.
So you get the saw that has the pressure like that, and then we're adding to it a turn, and that, like for instance, if you're coming across somebody's arms, like we often do in Bagua, we'll get to the outside, and then we'll come across and across their over the top of their arms and across their chest. And if you're doing that, that will drive this up into this area, and it'll help to tip them back while you're putting pressure. It's much harder to resist. But the big thing is anatomically, I just wanted to, a lot of us are not real familiar with anatomy. And this is actually, those bones are going like this. Or actually one bone is going like that, and the other one is staying there. And that membrane in between opens up a bit.
Yeah, it's bear in mind that the wrapping is a concept, so it's not meant to be literal.
Right, right.
It's just an idea of getting that drilling, rather than, to your point, Alfred, of those arms just coming out in a straight line. It's the whole idea of getting this turning in this of this wrapping. And as Sifu Solo pointed out, it tightens the fascia and the ligaments and tendons as well. Again, most of the internal arts are tendon arts. So that's what we're looking to do, is to make these all these weapons rigid, as if it were like a whip. At the moment of impact, it becomes almost like a steel rod, and then it goes limp again. That's really what we're looking to do. But yeah, great explanation. But bear in mind, it is just a concept rather than being literal, or when they talk about wrapping the bones.
Right. Oh no, I know. I just lots of times people are not aware that it's that it's a concept as opposed to
Right.
So,
right.
There's a lot of different vocabulary words that get thrown around for a lot of folks, and a lot of times I think we spend time just trying to understand what that is. You could say roll, you could say drill,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's great that you're doing this, Brandon. So yeah, we can all share these different ideas, and we have time and a forum to to, get on the same page in terms of, yeah, we all have different backgrounds and, but we're all talking about the kind of the same construct, so yeah, this is great.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to jump in? Okay.
I have a question for you. Before when you were talking about aligning your body using a string in the middle of your head,
Yeah.
did you really mean middle, or is it over the bihui point, which is closer to the crown?
Yeah, crown. Thank you.
I want to clarify that. It's really the crown of the head that forms that center line.
That's what I mean. Thank you. That's a missing word.
Yeah, Uncle used to always refer to that as the polar axis.
Yeah, yeah. In Chinese, it's the bihui point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Last little thought point on once you end in this position, right? And we've had your final snap. You also have, if you were just here, you wouldn't have as many possibilities as you here, because now you can also roll again, right? We can, or the eyes, or there's other things that you can do once you're here. Okay, next is let's talk about hide flower under leaf. We'll roll into it from lean on the horse. Okay. Okay, so we're here at lean on horse. Okay. Now at this point, we've made that contact. We're going to do that sticky. I would say roll is the term I would use right here. Roll on their arm, right? And as we roll, okay, we're going to be at the same time, arms and legs tend to move at the same time a lot. So as we're going, this foot is coming into, it's called kobu, okay, which is it's a triangle basically, or a V with the apex in front of you. Okay. So that rolls as this one holds the ball. Our knees are almost touching, and we rotate at the waist as far as you can. Okay. So breaking that down again here. Now you can see this movement. For me, this movement, looks like fall time, the leaf that's falling, right? And this is the flower. So we've got, again, that rotation here that we keep talking about, okay? Here, rotate, and as we twist, right? Now this can be an attack here, elbow. If this is grabbing their arm, this is a torso attack, right? If there's an opponent behind you, this is an elbow strike. This is an intercostal strike with the fingers, okay? When you push it this far and you keep going and looking behind, you can fight someone behind you, okay? The idea here is you really, really stretch this. And eventually you get fast at this where you're coming out of here and you come out real fast, right? But you got to do it slow at first. You got to slowly stretch this. I wrecked the heck out of myself spinning too fast, and all of these muscles just got all messed up, and my whole torso was just in pain for weeks. So be careful with that. Okay, but as you twist here, you'll feel like in your back there's pressure, and at a certain point you can't go any further, right? You have to realize that foot has to move, or you have to change directions. Okay, so if you can feel that, you're rotating. Again, be cognizant of your knees, rotating from the hip. Feel when you get to that point. The only thing you can do to keep going further is another move, remove helmet, where this guy comes over the head and does a strike and comes around. We won't do that one for now, but just stay with this idea here. When you get to here, either you're going to have to move this foot, either you're going to have to move this back foot, right, and twist out of this. You can see that, right? Or you're going to have to rubber band out. And that's that idea about the spinning the propeller, right? So when you let it go, wham. Okay, so you just sucked in, you just brought in the opponent, right? Suck them in here. Everything's grabbing, sticking. Here sticking, along here sticking. Your fingers are grabbing, you're pulling, you're hitting here, and now, boom, you hit him with force. Okay, that's the next move. So just examining this move a little bit. Do you have a stick? If you've got one close by. I've been playing with sticks a lot to sort of feel the connections between the two arms. Simple things like, you know, if you walk the circle with this, you know, obviously you have to make sure you're balanced, otherwise this thing will fall off. Okay. So let's just simulate here. Boom. This is our strike out. So I'm just holding down the stick like so. Now, here's where you can start to feel that idea of stickiness. So right now I've got the crevice here where I'm sliding here to hold it. And as I start to move here, I can actually use this twisting, rolling thing we've been talking about. It's just grabbing that stick. I mean, it's got it now. And then of course, fingers. Lots of applications for this one. And you don't see this elbow coming either sometimes because it's coming, their head is here. So it's a hidden strike. So here, once we're pulling, right, this is turning them again, turning their on their circle, and there's that hit, which you saw me do on Bob. So that hit that I did on Bob in this situation would be that hit plus their momentum, right, coming towards me. Okay, that's hitting quite a few of the points of hide flower, under leaf. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I have a question for you. I obviously don't know Bogwell like you guys do. So what tools do you use to develop functional velocities?
Speed?
Yeah, enough speed, functional velocity for the execution of the movement. You got to train that somehow. I was just wondering what kind of tools you use to develop those functional velocities.
Now, when you mean tools, do you mean other than forms? You're talking about like an apparatus tool,
Either
or
an apparatus or however you train functional velocities. I don't know how you do that.
go ahead, Eric.
One way that I like, for example, it's done through the spiraling, you know, through the legs. So one of the ways that I train my functional velocity is I use energy to extract more energy. So to your point, Sifu Solo, at the end of that piercing palm movement, to your point, you have like a pinpoint period of time where you're delivering your utmost of energy into that movement. So as soon as we deliver that strike, we want to take all that, in this particular case, forward pressure and wrapping, to extract more energy. And in Sifu Brandon's case of hiding flower under leaf, so the way that I train that is spiraling from the ground, making my ground path through the legs. So in the way I train my Bagua, one spiral always leads to the, so unspiraling to deliver an attack is going to lead me to spiral in the opposite direction, for lack of a better way to describe it. So in other words, in Brandon's airplane rubber band analogy, when the rubber band unwinds itself, say, to deliver that strike, at the same time it's doing that, it's also winding back the rubber band the other way completely to deliver that strike again. And the way I've trained my Bagua is a constant relationship between the winding and the unwinding of one movement to deliver a strike starts the winding of the other movement to also deliver a strike, and it just kind of perpetuates each other. So if that makes any sense, I try to use energy to extract from one movement to extract energy to deliver into the next.
Well, I understand that kind of philosophically,
Uh-huh.
but physically, you
So-
do it by training.
So I
Yeah,
would, I
so
would
physically
say
by
that,
training through walking the circle and the rotation of the body and the structure of the Kobu and Baibu stances, in addition to making all these different force vectors through each joint, is how I typically train it. And what Sifu Brandon was talking about at the end of high flower and relief, you get to a certain point where this has nowhere to go but to uncork to deliver the next attack. So the way it's classically trained is by walking the circle and paying attention to all of these small spirals through the body and through the joints when you're playing through your forms, if that answers the
Yeah.
question.
Alfred, you were going to say something?
well, I think maybe what you're wondering about is like, how do we train or develop real, like live action speeds?
Correct, yeah.
And
Physically.
so,
like when-
So what
when
I
you-
would say about that is that for my practice, I do the guas. I do them very slowly and very deeply, and then sometimes I do them very quickly. And I'll take sections of a gua or little bits. I will practice them with the idea of this is a technique that I'm doing against somebody. I don't know what your terminology would be. I break it into like little applications or, things like that. And I'll take those and try to do them at full speed. We'll say that at least for myself, I get the most value out of doing this stuff agonizingly slow, because that seems to train my nervous system the best, and it trains my leg strength the best. And one of the really foundational things of Bagua is to have a very strong connection to the ground, meaning basically to be connected through your feet. Everything is driven by leg power. It's not, my arms moving around. It's my body shifting on my legs. And the Kobu and the Baibu stepping allows me to turn quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
Is that sort of what you were thinking about?
Yes, that's a big part of the answer. Yes, thank you for that. Well, a couple of thoughts. First of all, I think virtually all systems work with that idea of the power coming from the ground up through the body. We all work with that one way or another. I do agree wholeheartedly with you about the idea of practicing slowly so you can really concentrate on the connectivity through the entire body. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. But I also agree with you that you have to do some training at full functional velocity. Like you said, sometimes you think of different ways of simulating application so you can do it at full speed. Because physiologically speaking, and it sounds like you have some background in physiology, you have the fast twitch muscle fiber and the slow twitch muscle fiber. If you don't train that fast twitch stuff, it'll atrophy. You just won't have that fast twitch connection anymore. So you have to practice, at some point, you have to practice at the functional velocity.
Right.
Right. In addition to stimulating the high twitch fiber by practicing at functional velocity, you enhance the neurologic innervation to recruit that fast twitch fiber. So all that stuff can go away if you never practice it. And as long as, and that's really what I was getting at. How do you get past, well, how do you, let me think of a good way to put this. It's kind of like two bookends. You got to do the slow stuff to really be able to focus on that connectivity and develop that feeling of drawing up from the feet to the knees, the hips, body, shoulders, etc. But you also have to train that fast twitch stuff. You got to do both. And
Right.
So,
yeah,
we don't want to throw our limbs Solo, you don't want to throw your limbs because of that idea of you're going to hurt yourself, right? If we just are so limp and we just throw them, people are, have that inherent resistance. We've talked about that idea.
Yeah.
So here's my idea.
If I may, Brandon, let me explain to the others what we're talking about. People in general have a natural inhibition to what's referred to as free limb acceleration. That's what you were talking about, correct?
Correct.
Right. There's a natural inhibition to freely flinging your limbs out in space. So what happens? The body subconsciously resists that free motion. So they introduce residual muscle tension, which inhibits free limb acceleration out of subconscious concern, which in turn limits your final velocity, which in turn limits your impact.
Right.
So you got to get people past that inhibition. Now, some people get past it very, very well. They start playing sports at a very young age, et cetera, et cetera. Also, when you swing an object like a tennis racket or a golf club or a bat, or you throw a baseball, the body senses that there's an inertial resistance to the free limb acceleration. So it's more willing to let the arm, in this case, arm whip forward without residual muscle tension, because subconsciously it believes that the inertial resistance will prevent you from hyperextending your limb. But when you throw just the limb out without that inertial resistance, most people experience that residual muscle tension, limits their velocity, and on and on and on. So you have to train yourself to believe that you will stop the limb before it hyperextends and causes self-injury. That's a skill that's developed over time.
Okay, so I think I can maybe answer the question now for myself. And it has to do with going slow and it has to do with going fast. So I have this idea that if we train our body with our mind, but then our body trains our mind. So this, what I'm talking about, when you feel this, and there's nothing you can do, if you keep going this, you're going to hurt yourself, that, you can feel, you can move this leg. You're doing that sort of training back and forth where your body's giving that information back to your brain. And then you practice repetition. You get faster and faster. Slow is steady, steady is fast.
Well, let me expand on what you're saying. In the beginning, if you try to rotate very quickly, the body will inhibit you from doing so because it will be concerned with injuring yourself, over rotating.
Correct.
Till you train it enough to teach the body that it's okay to go at maximum rate of acceleration because you know what to do next to prevent the hyperextension.
Right, and I think that's like for me, it's a gradual, where I practice slow for a long time until I feel like it's smooth and completely natural. And we're also going off of natural motions too. This motion is, not that much different in some ways.
Yeah.
So some of the main injuries that athletes get are hyperextension and acceleration, deceleration injuries.
Yes.
And it's
Agreed.
because their bodies are unprepared for the type of motion that you're talking about. So it is about breaking inhibition, but before you do that, the body is resisting that for a very good.
Oh shoot, he got Zoom.
Just lost sound.
Yeah. I think he dropped out totally. Oh, okay. He'll probably come right back in. Let me jump on something here, because this is actually where I'm getting to at this point. When we're here, we're just about to do that acceleration that we're talking about fast. You can see that if I accelerate like this real fast, what's got to happen? It's either I'm hitting something or my other arm's going to kick into it, right? So one, like Eric was saying, right? One, this is going so far. Now I know if I didn't hit something and it's stopping and my mind control is ready to okay, now I'm going to move over here. I just have to keep going. So that again, here, boom, I feel like I'll hurt myself right there, right? I'm going to really mess up something. And then I don't.
But that's what I was saying. Well, your proof of point where you've now taught the body that you know what to do to prevent hyperextension of the joints.
Correct.
What
Correct.
you've
Yeah,
done is
um,
you've continued the flow, so you
Yeah.
haven't exceeded the range of motion for any particular joint.
Right. And now I'm
Oh,
You know
hold
what?
on, Alfred's back.
right. This
By
is
the way, I just saw the orthopedic thing on your shirt. Now I know where you're all coming from.
but yeah,
Alfred, why don't you let
to
Alfred
Sifu's-
finish his thought?
sorry. Go ahead. Al.
Sorry about that. I had moved my computer and it just suddenly ran out of juice. Yeah, so yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, go for it. Finish your thought.
So part of training in martial arts, if we want to go faster, and go for more extremes of motion, we need to strengthen certain parts of the body, and we also need to train the nervous system to operate in those ranges. And a big part of it is training the nervous system. But
Yep.
the other part is training, literally making the muscle stronger. One of the most common injuries that people see are like rotator cuff injuries, right? And those are almost always due to weakness in the muscles of the rotator cuff. And somebody has done something. They've done some movement that the big shoulder muscles and the chest muscles are plenty strong enough to do. So like I can use my pec and my big shoulder muscles to just drive this arm forward really hard. But the muscles that keep the arm on and
The stabilizers.
control it
They're
are
the
these much
stabilizers.
smaller muscles. Yes, the stabilizer, the
The
intrinsic
stabilizers.
muscles.
Yes.
So like in the
intrinsic muscles.
shoulder, it's like the infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres minor, teres major, and the subscapularis. And if you look these muscles up, they're relatively small.
Small.
And then you've been doing like a lot of push-ups or a lot of bench press, and then you go out and you throw a baseball really hard or something, and that pec can create an incredible amount of velocity. But if your sits muscles, your intrinsic stabilizer muscles are not developed, you're going to tear that shoulder up. And your body kind of knows this, and so it's going to inhibit that unless you override it. And so a lot of our training is about doing motions repeatedly so that we can train the nervous system, but also to train those muscles. A lot of what we do with our postures, where we're holding our postures, and we hold them for a long time, and we try to relax the body. We talk about relaxing, and sometimes people say, don't use your muscles. That's not possible. You actually have to use muscles. But what you want to do is use as little muscle as possible, because then what happens is you start engaging the intrinsic stabilizer muscles, and you're disengaging the extrinsic power muscles. And that trains your body to be able to withstand these higher velocities that we want to obtain. So it's all part of our training, when we're doing our postures. So
just as you were saying before about training what would be the opposing muscle groups to an appropriate strength level. I saw your shirt says orthopedic something on it. So now I know where you're coming from. What's one of the most common injuries for sprinters?
For sprinters?
Yeah.
I don't.
Hamstrings, right?
What's that?
They tear their hamstrings.
Yeah,
A lot of times they tear their hamstrings. Why do they tear their hamstrings? When they push off, they have so much momentum in the lower leg. As the lower leg goes from the rear towards the front, and the hamstrings have to fire to stop the forward momentum of the lower leg before the knee hyperextends. Well, there's so much inertia that the hamstrings have to fire really hard to stop that forward motion of the lower leg. If they're not strong enough, they tear.
Right.
If they don't react fast enough, or they're not strong enough. So part of what we do is train technique in a balanced way, so that you have appropriate strength in the opposing muscle groups to offset the forward acceleration of the agonist muscle groups, the extension muscle groups. So
Right.
you have to always work to maintain that balance between agonist and antagonist muscle groups.
So in our Bagua practice, that's why I was saying that I feel like we get a lot of value, probably most value from doing our stances and our forms, our guas, agonizingly slowly, and with very careful attention to position and proper weight shifting and proper foot placement, because this develops what you're just talking about. It'll develop the body in an even way, and it'll teach the body how to do these motions properly, so that then when you do them fast, you don't injure yourself. And you can do them very quickly because the motion or the shape or the structure has been so finely and well trained.
Have you ever heard of the theory of specificity of speed of exercise?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever heard of the theory titled specificity of speed of exercise?
I haven't heard of that, but yeah.
Okay, if you go back to research that was done in the 1990s, there was a number of clinicians established that strength is built at the speed at which you exercise. So for example, during normal ambulation, the rotational velocity about the knee is about 60 degrees per second. At a jog, it's about 240 degrees per second. A experienced martial artist can do a front kick at about 2,000 degrees per second, a rotational velocity around the knee. And according to this theory, respectively, each one of those motions would develop strength at the 60 degrees per second rotational velocity, or the 240 or the 2000. Okay, and it's fairly spiked, meaning that if you're exercising at 240 degrees per second rotational velocity about the knee, you can get a lot of strength at that velocity, and there's only a little bit of overflow to higher and lower velocities. So according to this theory, to have enough strength to stop the forward momentum of the lower leg during a front kick, for an experienced practitioner, remember the knee rotational velocity around the knee is like 2,000 degrees per second, the hamstring would have to fire quickly enough and at a high enough strength to hold the leg back before it hyperextends. So I totally agree with those advantages of the slow training to create the synergistic motion. But I do think that that has to be balanced with exercise at the speed at which the activity takes place to create safe functional velocity movement.
Yeah, I agree. And to summarize, I've heard, you guys have maybe heard, you play the way you practice.
Exactly.
And to your point, I also train a white crane system, and from day one, they're all about velocity and whip and extension, and also the retraction coming back as quick as the extension within movement, and that's from day one. And so they train velocity and speed and whip, and the principle of half hard, half soft, but also the retraction coming back as quickly as the extension. And so their paradigm is exactly that. You train speed and velocity and extension to its maximum from day one, and then as you progress, you learn new techniques and new things, and you're refining. But that's a training paradigm that's instilled from day one is velocity and speed and extension.
Well, it's one of the kind of hurdles that we face as martial artists when compared to many other sports, and there's many other sports that are very, very difficult to learn. But as far as I'm concerned, and I think we may be looking at it from a very biased approach, the the extent of the skills required to develop high-level technique in martial arts is broad, very, very broad. So you have to do the slow practice and you need the fast practice. You need the balance between the two to end up with high-level skills. So it's such a dichotomy of training that makes it really interesting. And that might be one of the things that is so attractive to all of us about martial practices.
Sure.
Sounds good. Good lively discussion there. How about I finish up that last movement, the third movement here? All right. So we were here. This gets to just what we were talking about, Alfred. You were gone for a second. Okay. But as we come out of this, we're sprung. We're going to drill again. So as this comes up here, rises, rotating rise, and then rotates as it drills down. And again, you'll feel as we go slow here, I can feel it all the way in this. Oops. You can feel it all the way backside of his calf to where I feel like if you do it, push it until you rotate on your heel, you'll suddenly feel that relief in your body. Like you've taken it out of danger, right? Here. And so what I was showing when you were gone for a second, Alfred, is that what we're talking about is practicing it slow and practicing it fast. And, you know, the military talks about crawl, walk, run. So you speed up as you start to feel good and you keep it smooth. And you get to a point where now you're whipping and you feel like, oh, okay, yeah, right there, I feel that movement's going. But I can get there now because I've gone fast. And I can see that that can lead into a final finishing strike or something else, right? Okay. There's a couple of drills, just real thought. Well, we can't really do those drills. Let me just share just a couple of other crazy ideas that I've got for practicing. Has anybody worked with these before?
I have a little bit, not too much.
Wing Chun?
Yeah, the circles.
Yeah.
I've done a little.
Kind of small for a hula hoop. At least for me, I'd never get that around my waist.
Yeah. So well, I'm not going to use it for Wing Chun. I just was to kind of explore trying to build flow and speed with those movements. Sifu Sola, years and years ago, you had me hold a exercise ball and do this.
I remember.
That's a long, long time ago. So this is sort of a extrapolation of that. Okay, so here, this movement right here is high flower underleaf. This movement here, right? Black dragon exits the cave. So you can move this and start to build your speed up and work with how it works with movement of your feet as well. Also, this idea here, when we're doing Black Dragon exits the cave, this movement, like Pichuan, and again, I can do it slowly, really start to feel all of that rotating here. You know, switch the hands or go the opposite way. And so this and the stick I've been playing with as far as to try to help myself with that sort of circular flow. That's the end of my little spiel.
So I'd like to add something about Wild Goose because I think it's
this one.
Yeah. One of the my computer doesn't have any juice, so the angle's going to be odd. So one of the things the ways that we get power in Wild Goose, I think, is unique to Bagua. And in Bagua, like in Tai Chi, we treat the spine as a rod that doesn't move. But in Bagua, we can move the upper, what we might call the upper dantian, the chest. So I'm rolling it in a circle. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, it's coming through pretty well.
So that's one of the ways that we get power in Bagua that's fairly unique. I have not seen it in any other martial art. And so the way that that's shown in Wild Goose, in Black Dragon, is when I'm doing hide the flower under the leaves, and I go to the turn here, and I turn this around, and I start to do my Wild Goose, I'm gonna do that chest rolling, right? So I'm driving it by moving, and it's not just my chest, it's my whole spine. So your spine is not a rod, even though many martial arts treat it that way for good reasons. There are good reasons to treat it that way, but it's actually a whole bunch of interconnected joints, right? Little bones that have the ability to spiral and turn and rotate in opposition to each other. And so in Bagua, we use that. And you can, this motion like that, just this, with just the turn, is pretty powerful. But if I add the closing and then the opening and rolling, this motion to that, I get a whole lot more power. I get a lot of lifting power. I can power an elbow that way. I can power a piercing palm. I get a whole bunch of power by rolling this. And when we do, especially later in our other form that we do, there is a lot of that kind of motion, right? We move this part of the body, but we also move this part, right? And we get a lot of that turning body power. And
Okay, so
I think it's unique to Bagua. And even in our beginner form, we should be getting that, and especially in Wild Goose, because it's actually where we first really see that motion in a beginner form. We get that rolling of the spine, and it creates an incredible amount of power, especially if you're up close and you've used your footwork to trap their feet, and then you're crashing with a rolling upper body. You know, if I step in, if I've stepped in with my footwork and I've trapped their leg, and then I come through here and I roll the body as I lift that, and then I step around, and I get this action going.
Uprooting them, taking them off balance.
Yeah.
And it uses your torso, which is powerful, especially on a big, huge guy like me, right? I mean, I can generate incredible amounts of power just standing here and, you know, just moving my torso around, doing hula hoop motions with my whole body, right? Belly dancing. So anyway, that would be something that I think if we're doing Bagua, we should always be mindful of.
Very good.
I think that was a great way of displaying how to enhance whipping motion by using the flexibility between the vertebrae just like whipping a real whip, how each element of the whip accelerates the next element. Each one of the vertebrae in your flexible back motion accelerates the next vertebrae, and that keeps building and building until it ends up enhancing the torsional component, whipping the limbs out into space. So,
Right.
Alfred,
Yeah, for me, that was totally effective. Like I saw what I thought of was absolutely the whipping motion, but then also the reciprocal motion, right? How to generate power, because there's a reciprocal motion happening there that ends up resulting in huge whipping power.
and that's what reciprocal motion does. It creates torques, right? If you just try to create torque with one limb extending or one vertebrae against the other, it's only half the equation. When you can create the relative rotation between two elements, you enhance the torque, which will subsequently end up in enhanced rotational acceleration.
You know, in like Xingyi and Tai Chi, we'll take the we'll take the spine and do like a bang, like a power motion, which is basically an eruption up through the spine, almost like a sneeze, right? That erupts from starts with the legs, and then the pelvis. The pelvis does a rapid rotation, not rotation, but a forward back tilt.
Yeah.
Yep, you're doing it there, the dragon back, right?
Yeah.
And so that's used in a lot of martial arts. But that spiraling motion is the same idea taken into a spiral.
Taken into torque.
Yeah, we take it off of the straight line and we put it into a rotation, which is like I said, I think I've seen a lot of martial arts and I've practiced a lot of different martial arts, and I've never seen another martial art do it that way like Bagua does regularly, and especially with the big dragon form. We do that, with all of those big, motions like that. I mean, that's basically what we're practicing, is getting that same dragon back motion, but on a spiral. Powerful stuff. I mean, if you're in close and you're driving your body against somebody that way, and you've used your Bagua footwork properly to trap their legs or to cut their legs as you're moving in, you're going to do some damage with your body when you start doing those whipping torso motions. So,
Hey, you guys, it is just a little bit after 8:30 now. So any final wrap-ups? This has been a really productive session, I must say.
Just real quick, in the very beginning, you talked about 3 internal systems. Don't forget Yichuan and Liu Hebafa. There's 5 internal systems.
I didn't know. I'll have to look into that. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
Yichuan and Liu Hebafa.
right, and each one, our teacher had something that he called mother movements.
Yeah.
And you heard Brandon talking about gathering and separating, and our teacher, Uncle Wayne, he based a lot of that off of Yichuan systems. That basically that kind of gathering or separating motion and getting the center, and it's right, it's right out of Yichuan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Uncle Wayne used to always say the hardest he's ever been hit was by a Yichuan player.
Well, you know why? The yi means mind,
Mine.
or, right? Or it's more than just the mind, it's your intention. And in Yichuan, you develop that intention, and in reality, intention is the driving force for your chi energy.
Mhm.
So they develop that yi to such a high level that they can execute with tremendous amounts of power.
Yeah.
So Yichuan, Liu He Bafa is 6 combination, 8 methods. Liu He Bafa. So it's 5 internal systems.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We
Yeah,
could
this
go
has
on.
been great.
We can go on for hours.
Yeah.
I know, I know. I will, I will send
Maybe
you.
that's for another conversation, yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. It was a great, great discussion on functional velocity. Yeah, that was awesome discussion to have. And yeah, I think it's something that you know, a lot of people don't necessarily maybe even think about. But yeah, it's at the crux of everything that we should be doing.
Well, it's nice to combine the kind of the Chinese philosophical approach with physics and physiology.
Yeah.
So you got physics, physiology, and philosophy. And when you can combine and integrate the three, that's when I think you have a real deep understanding of the movement.
Yes, sir.
Addison, you want to say anything else, or Ron? Bert?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, you guys. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye. Take care, everyone.